You are lying on your couch right now, scrolling through your phone, feeling a strange, restless anxiety you cannot quite explain. You are exhausted from a long day of routine chores, studying for exams, or looking after children, yet your mind refuses to rest. By all laws of nature, you should be the happiest, most relaxed organism to ever walk the earth. You are sitting in a temperature-controlled room with infinite calories in your kitchen and a supercomputer in your pocket that can summon a car or a warm meal in 4 minutes. Yet that constant low-level sense of dread persists, making you easily distracted, easily irritated, and deeply craving validation from strangers on a glowing screen. The answer to this modern riddle is simple. Your body is living in the 21st century, but your brain is still trapped in a dark, rainy cave 50,000 years ago. To understand why you feel so broken, we have to look at the ultimate evolutionary hacks that kept our ancestors alive. We have to examine how their greatest survival features, the very traits that help them walk across continents, survive ice ages, and outlast every other human species, have become the ultimate bugs of modern life. Once you understand the history of these biological mismatches, you will finally understand the ghost in your own machine. Consider how your day began. If you got in your car this morning, turned a key, and pressed a pedal, you moved 40 miles an hour without using a single muscle. 100,000 years ago, that same journey would have taken 2 full days of walking barefoot through territory that could kill you, with no roads, no paths, and nothing to carry you except your own 2 feet. Today, we fly across the planet in hours and get annoyed when the airport wireless internet is slow, forgetting that for 99% of human history, movement was incredibly hard, slow, and dangerous. Your legs are actually masterpieces of biomechanical engineering. Unlike a cheetah that sprints at 70 miles per hour but overheats, or a horse that can only run for a few miles before stopping, humans are built to never stop walking. Your feet have arches that act as physical springs. Your Achilles tendons store and release energy with every stride, and you possess 2 million sweat glands to cool you down while other mammals collapse in the heat. Millions of years ago, this endurance was our only transportation technology, and it was enough to take us further than any species had ever gone. Starting 70,000 years ago, small groups of humans began walking out of Africa, not in a single massive march, but generation by generation, pushing further into lands no human had ever seen. They walked 15,000 miles to cross Asia, Europe, and the land bridge into the Americas. They did not wander randomly. They traded precious tools like obsidian, shells, and amber across hundreds of miles, building vast networks on foot. But walking could only take them so far. When our ancestors hit the edge of the water, they did not turn back. 800,000 years ago, ancient hominins crossed 12 miles of deep ocean to reach the island of Flores, leaving stone tools behind as proof of their journey. 65,000 years ago, humans sailed at least 60 miles of open ocean to reach Australia, pointing crude rafts toward a horizon they could not even see. And 3,000 years ago, the Polynesians crossed the massive Pacific Ocean in double-hulled canoes, reading nothing but the stars, the ocean swells, and the color of clouds to navigate thousands of miles of open water. For most of human history, the true barrier was not distance but weight. A single human can only carry about 40 to 60 pounds before their body begins to break down, so we cheated. We began dragging heavy game on animal hides, then invented the travois, 2 long poles tied together to distribute the load. 15,000 years ago, we partnered with dogs to pull sleds through ice and snow. And 5,500 years ago, on the windy steppes of Kazakhstan, humans domesticated the horse, shrinking the human world eightfold in a single generation. Amazingly, we sailed oceans and tamed horses before we ever invented the wheel. The oldest wheel, found in Slovenia, is only 5,200 years old, and it did not even start as a transportation tool. It was a spinning disc used to shape clay pottery. When we finally turned it on its side, combined it with horses, and laid down the first paved roads in Ur, trade exploded and empires became possible. We solved the problem of distance so completely that we forgot it was ever a problem in the first place. But physical movement was only half the struggle. What happened when our ancestors could not move? Imagine you have not eaten in 2 days. You know exactly where a herd of prey is, and suddenly a heavy, freezing rain begins to fall. For an ancient human, rain was not an excuse to stay cozy with a warm beverage. It was an active crisis. A wet human loses body heat 25 times faster than a dry one, and a long rainstorm below 50 degrees could trigger fatal hypothermia in hours. Rain washed away tracks, turned soil to slippery mud where a twisted ankle meant death, and forced humans and deadly predators like leopards into the exact same dry caves. In the middle of that terrifying damp darkness, one job mattered more than anything: keeping the fire alive. Before 40,000 years ago, starting a fire from scratch was an incredibly rare and difficult skill. If your fire died, you could not easily relight it. You had to carry smoldering coals wrapped in leaves or packed inside tinder fungus, which acted as a biological lighter. When Ötzi the Iceman was found frozen in the Alps, he was carrying a complete fire kit in his pouch for this exact reason. During a storm, someone had to sit by that fire for hours, splitting wet logs to find the dry wood inside and using birch bark, which contains a chemical called betulin that burns even when wet. That fire was warmth, safety, cooked food, and the center of the tribe's social life. When forced to stay inside for days, our ancestors did not get bored. They got creative. They manufactured stone tools, leaving piles of tiny stone chips near the firelight. They ground red ochre pigment inside abalone shells to create workshops. They carved delicate bone needles with tiny drilled eyes to sew warm clothing. Stuck inside a cave in Germany 35,000 years ago, someone spent hours carving a rope-making machine out of mammoth ivory. Rope allowed them to build stronger shelters, set traps, and bind tools. They even made their caves comfortable, arranging bedding from grasses and Cape laurel leaves, which acted as a natural insect repellent. And deep inside the dark chambers of caves like Chauvet, Altamira, and Lascaux, they crawled hundreds of meters with animal fat lamps to paint breathtaking, tensed muscles of bison and lions. These rainy days were also the birth of human culture. When 15 to 30 people are trapped in a tight space for days, they talk. Anthropologists studying the Kalahari Bushmen found that while daytime talk is practical, 80% of nighttime campfire conversations shift to stories, songs, and ceremonies. The campfire was our original social network, a place where critical survival secrets were passed down. Some of these stories, like Australian Aboriginal oral traditions describing rising sea levels, survived for 7,000 years through nothing but word of mouth. Rain gave our ancestors the downtime to think, teach, and create. Our ancestors also possessed a deep connection to the natural chemistry of the earth, which led to our long relationship with alcohol. 10 million years ago, in the forests of Africa, our primate ancestors evolved a genetic taste for fermented fruit because the scent of ethanol signaled ripe, calorie-dense sugars. By the time nomadic humans arrived, the craving was already hardwired into our biology. In a cave in Israel 13,000 years ago, long before the invention of farming, nomads were already soaking wild barley in stone mortars to brew beer. At Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, 12,000 years ago, hunter-gatherers carved massive 10-ton stone pillars and filled giant stone vats with fermented grain to host massive regional ritual feasts. Some scientists believe we did not start farming to make bread, but rather to guarantee a steady supply of beer. By the time of ancient Egypt, pyramid workers were paid 4 to 5 liters of beer a day as their actual salary. It was cleaner than the Nile, packed with crucial calories, and served as currency, medicine, and temple offerings all at once. This incredible drive to cooperate, trade, and share information is the exact reason Homo sapiens are the only human species left on Earth today. 50,000 years ago, we shared the planet with several other kinds of humans. There was Homo erectus, who survived for nearly 2 million years but eventually went extinct in isolation on the island of Java. There were the powerful Neanderthals, who had slightly larger brains than us, hunted large game and buried their dead, but lived in small, isolated groups. There were the mysterious Denisovans of Siberia, whose DNA still helps modern Tibetans breathe thin mountain air. And there was Homo floresiensis, a tiny 3-foot-tall human with a brain the size of a grapefruit, living alongside giant reptiles on a remote Indonesian island. When the climate shifted and resources grew scarce, other human species faded away because their small, isolated groups could not recover from hard times. Homo sapiens survived not because we were stronger or individual geniuses, but because we built massive cooperative networks across hundreds of miles. If one of our groups faced a crisis, the knowledge and resources of the entire network kept them alive. We were not destined to be the last ones standing. We were simply the ones who knew how to connect. Now, look back at your modern life. You are the descendant of these incredibly tough, highly connected, friction-seeking survival machines. Your ancestors survived ice ages and walked across nameless continents because they were hardwired to seek high-calorie fuel, instant rest, and constant social approval. Today, we have built a world where you can get all three with a simple tap of your finger, and it is quietly driving us crazy. Your brain's ancient scanning software is still running. When you get distracted by a sudden notification at your desk, that is not a defect. It is your ancient predator detection system scanning the cave for leopards. When you crave sugar or alcohol, it is your primate brain trying to store energy for a winter famine that will never come. When you scroll endlessly through social media, you are desperately trying to feed your deep evolutionary hunger for tribal campfire connection with cold blue light. The ultimate lesson of human evolution is that we were never designed to be completely comfortable. Our bodies and minds thrive on solving friction. When you feel anxious, restless, or distracted, do not view it as a personal failure or a broken mind. You just have an old operating system running in a world it was never built for. The secret to living today is not to fight your biology, but to design positive friction back into your life. Turn off the infinite scroll, step out into the cold rain, walk until your feet are tired, and find a real campfire to share stories with the people you actually love. That is how you debug the machine.